been here before. We started it last spring, so will be a year old this May actually. And it started by 4 like-minded individuals, private initiative. We all lived abroad. I lived in the UK, Nele lived in Denmark, and Reilik in Germany. And what we missed in Estonia was sort of international events where both expats who live here and locals can mingle, change information about each other, and learn more about the country. So we've had different events on Estonian history, religion, working culture, even local politics, gender equality. And tonight's event is about diversity and tolerance. And could tolerance boost Estonia? This is the question what we're asking. And we're aiming to find answers to the following questions. Would more tolerance bring Estonia more talent? How tolerant are Estonians? Where is the country heading? And what is at stake? We have invited 5 distinguished guests. First off, we've got Kari Kasper, who founded and leads the Estonian Human Rights Center, which is an independent human rights NGO. He also works as a lecturer of EU and human rights law at Tallinn University of Technology, and in the past he led an awareness-raising campaign, Diversity Enriches, in Estonia. And we also have Christina and Sarah Raud. They will talk about the story later on the panel. It's an interesting story. We also have Taavi Rõivas here, who is the former Estonian Prime Minister. So very glad to welcome here. And Mikk Salu, who is a journalist at Eesti Ekspress, which is the largest weekly newspaper in Estonia. But first off, I'm delighted to welcome, sorry, just before I forget, we're also using a platform called Slido tonight. It's, if you go to a website called slido.com and type in the code, which is X187, you can post questions there online, and we will see on the screen. If you obviously, we'll ask questions later on. I mean, you can ask questions verbally as well, but if you want to do it during the first presentation or later during the panel, you can just post it anonymously, and then we'll answer those questions. Kari will have will give a presentation, then we'll have a short break after, and then followed by a panel. But first off, please welcome Kari Kasper, who will introduce the role of diversity and tolerance in fostering creativity and innovation in the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Silver. So, hello from my side. Very happy to be here. We haven't had a lot of events where we have a chance to talk to people. So we've come from our Human Rights Center, Ivory Tower, among the locals here in Telliskivi, which is, of course, a question in itself, how much this is actually real. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So, can you see what's on the photo? Yeah, it's here. So, the question is that people say that this is a very interesting place to be, because when I come here, for example, I was born in Tallinn. I lived in Tallinn all my life. But I come here and I sometimes feel like I'm in a foreign country, because it doesn't feel like Tallinn. It feels like something different. Is it better? Is it worse? I don't know. But today's presentation is a little bit about that. So what is a good place? What is a good country? What is a good life, perhaps? How can we, and what should we do here in Estonia to make lives better? Or do we want to make lives better? Do we want to make people happier or not? So those are a lot of questions, and I'm not going to answer them in my 30 minutes. So I'm just going to open up the topic for you. I'm going to talk about this from my perspective. So this is a perspective of one person that is, of course, I'm using other people's ideas that I'm building on. But I hope it will be interesting for you, and at least you will get some food for thought from this presentation. And I hope it will also feed into the discussion later on. And let's just go ahead. So, how many of you have heard about Carlota Perez? There's a few, so for those of you, I will not need to explain who she is, but she is this very fantastic Venezuelan professor who actually teaches, I'm very proud to say that he also teaches here in Tallinn, at Tallinn University of Technology. And she has come up with, she studies innovation, she studies development, she studies what makes world develop. And she's, you know, one of the, in a line of innovation scholars, starting from Kondratiev, Martin Freeman, now this Carlota Perez. After her students are Mariana Mazzucato, for example, if you know her, she's doing great work on innovation and public service at the moment. So she's come up with this idea that every 70 years ago, there's a huge techno-economic paradigm shift. So everything will change, technology-driven shift. It will change the economy, it will change the society, it will change people, it will change who we are. And these changes happen in this kind of a wave. And we are in the middle of this one wave right now, which is the ICT-led techno-economic paradigm shift. So the ICT will change all the other industries. ICT industry has developed, and it will change all the other industries as well. And it will change also people. It will change how we think. It will change how we, you know, what we consider important, what are our values, and the way how we work together, or what do we do, how we work. So I cannot explain her theories adequately, so you're welcome to look it out yourself. But I think she's one of the building blocks that I think helps us to lead into this story. And the other building block is Richard Florida. How many of you have heard of Richard Florida? Again, only a few, but he's this kind of, he was very popular in the 2000s. So he's kind of, right now he's making a little bit of a comeback. Was in the 2000s, he was called superstar professor. So he was really this guy who came around and was like a superstar. I know, because we tried to invite him to Estonia in 2010, I think. And he really had a rider and everything. He asked for, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to speak for 45 minutes. So I'm not getting paid that much today. So, what made him the superstar was his idea of the creative class. This is his book, The Rise of the Creative Class, which he came up with the idea that these days it's no longer how you develop or how you grow your city or your economy is not just you attract the employers, you attract the businesses, but you also have to attract the people. You have to attract the creative class, which is not coming just because you have a job somewhere. They're not just coming, but they need something more. And he said that this creative class is actually the main driver of the economy. It's no longer the, you know, the middle class or whatever. And the creative class is something that is not only creative people, it's not only artists or writers, but it's in a kind of a wider concept. It's everyone who does something that is creative. So I'm a lawyer, so I'm kind of a part of the creative class. But all these kind of jobs, which you might, if you don't want to be so nice, you might call them yuppies, or in the 90s, or this kind of people. So he actually wrote this book and said that, okay, cities, if you bring in the creative class, you will be great. Everything will be good. But then it didn't really happen that way. So he had to write another book, which was just published, I think this year, this urban crisis, because a lot of cities actually followed his recommendations, and they built places like these, like Telliskivi, like Kalamaja. They built, and then what came was gentrification, high housing prices, and huge economic inequality, huge segregation. So in Tallinn, we see this happening as well. If you move in one of the areas of the city, you can meet people that you would otherwise never meet because you only go in your own circles. So it's hugely, he said that cities are becoming this kind of segregating factors. So he has had to think it over a little bit. But we're here in this, for this context, we talk about still the creative class, and we talk about the 3 T's that he also became known. So if you want to be a superstar professor, you have to have slogans. You have to have something that's quick and easy. So the 3 T's was one of his quick and easy explanations. And he said that for attracting this creative class, for being successful, you need the 3 T's. You need to have a technology base. So if we talk about the ICT paradigm, then of course you need a base, that a country or a city where there is already technology happening. There is already a base of technological innovation. People know these things. You can also steal it like China did, but you should try to, you need that. Then you need talent, of course, because talent is something that is perhaps becoming the most precious resource in these times. It's very difficult to find the right talent. Many companies in Estonia are struggling with this, to get the talented, educated, motivated people who are willing to work for you. It's difficult. And they're not willing to work for just any company and any place, those who are in the creative class. And what he says is that you also need tolerance. That tolerance is actually, as is in from one of his books, I've put this diagram, that tolerance is kind of the basis of all of this. That tolerance is needed for talent to come, because if you don't have tolerance, talent is not happy. They will leave. There is no innovation and technology happening if there is no tolerance. Because how do you create innovation? Innovation happens when you do something differently. And for doing something differently, you have to also think differently. So you have to have people who are different in your community, in your surroundings, in your so you need diversity, basically. And if you don't have that, no matter how good technology you have, no matter how talented people, how much you try to pay people, they might not come. They will not come, and you will not be successful. So he, of course, is a professor, unlike me, so he actually has a lot of data behind it to show how it all comes together. Of course, the caveat is that his books are based on US example, so it's not perhaps applicable all over the world in the exactly same way, but he has also shown that it's, in some ways it is. And what he of course did was he also became famous for his the different indexes that he used to track the tolerance factor. And one of them was the gay index. So he had to prove many, many times that he was not actually gay. Because he came up with a gay index, and everybody thought, okay, this is some weird gay guy trying to justify why we should be all, why we should, I don't know, like gay people or tolerate gay people. So the gay index, later on, it kind of spiraled into the Bohemian index, or whatever you want to call it. it is, and why the gay index works was because you can really check that, if people are tolerant of gays in a specific city or community, it is an indicator of overall tolerance. So you can really see, okay, people who are very, very tolerant of gays in a city, they're probably tolerant of other kind of differences as well. And so that works out for this diversity. And here, I took some of his more recent work from his blog, so he actually shows how this creative class is growing in different US areas where it was in 2000 and how it has become more and more prevalent. There's another picture here. There's another story here. Now we start slowly going to Estonia and talking about Estonia and talking about values. So one of the ways how you can also track tolerance is using the World Value Survey data. And this is the overall map of the World Value Survey, started by Ronald Inglehart, continued by many, many scholars. And it has two axes. One axis is, you can see, traditional versus secular rational. The other one is kind of how well, which is not visible unfortunately here, but it's how it is self-expression versus survival. So on this side it's actually survival, on the other side it's self-expression values. And we can see from here that the countries of the world are actually lumped in a certain specific groups. Estonia is its own little group there, Baltic group, because they couldn't work out where to put Estonia. It wasn't really Eastern Europe, it wasn't Nordic for sure, etc. So it's actually quite close to Confucian countries like Korea. So it's now I understand why there has been recently a very increasing exchange between Japan and Estonia, because we are similar culturally. So and here Estonia, you can see, is there in the basically top left corner, and that shows that Estonia is very secular, very rational, as we can evidence. Our religion is technology, our religion is science, well, except for certain homeopathic and other practices. But mostly Estonians are secular rational, and in that case we are almost similar to other Nordic countries, Western European countries, etc. We are not as secular rational as Japan, but hopefully we're possibly getting there. The other axis, unfortunately, is not so, we're not so similar to the countries we want to be similar with. Perhaps we don't. So this is where one side is survival values, the other side is self-expression values. Survival values are, what is the most important thing? Economic well-being. How am I going to get food for my family? How am I going to get by? Is somebody attacking us? And the self-expression values is, this is about tolerance of people who are different, LGBT tolerance, all this stuff. So here we can see that Estonia actually is, in the same, from the axis side, not so different from some African countries or other countries, Orthodox countries, that we really don't usually want to be associated with. So it's this kind of a dualistic nature of Estonia, that we are with one foot in kind of the Western Nordic value system, and with the other foot we are in the non-Western, or let's say this other type of value group. Now we're coming to the gay index in Estonia, or the tolerance for LGBT people in Estonia, because this is one of the indicators, and this is also what we're going to use today as one of the benchmarks. I'm not sure how many of you saw that in social media. It was shared because of the Ida Hotb Day, which is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. This is from the OECD, which maps, which countries are homophobic, which are not. And Estonia, you can see, is third from the bottom. So, and who is next to it? South Korea. So again, proof that we are actually an Asian country somehow in here in the Nordic area. So that's not good, and it's also not good that things haven't really improved much because values, they change very, it takes very long time to change values. We also see that in the Social Progress Index, acceptance of homosexuality, Estonia is in the 59th place of 128 countries. So it's not usual where we like Estonia to be among the top 10, top 20, top 30. And also in the ILGA Europe Rainbow Europe Index, which tracks the acceptance of the legal side of gay rights, Estonia has 39%, so quite far from the truth, quite far from the actual 100% rights. And we also show, I like to also show some studies that we made on this. We've done at the Human Rights Center basically 3 public opinion polls, professionally done, face-to-face questions. This is the guy who comes and knocks on your door, or a woman comes and knocks on your door, and can I ask you some questions? And then the answer. And here I took out some of the information to shock you, basically. It is just for shock value to think that, okay, what is the situation in Estonia? So here, when you ask the question, do you think that homosexuality is acceptable? We see an improvement, sure, from 2012 to 2017, but we see that there is still a 50-50 thing. So this is not about gay marriage, so I have a slide about that later on, but it's just a question of acceptability. Perhaps it's a badly phrased question, but this is something that's also used in the World Values Survey. When we look at the Estonian speakers only, and try to be a little bit Russophobic, then we see that things get better, because what actually happened was that during the last 2 times that we did the survey, actually the acceptance level of Russians went down because of the Russian propaganda ban, gay propaganda ban, and all the things that are happening in Russia towards LGBT people. Most recently the horrible things that have been happening in Chechnya, etc. So this has an impact also Estonian Russian-speaking community, sadly. And this is a question for us, why haven't we done anything on that front? We also asked lots of interesting questions, like, because it was a really long survey. So we asked, for example, if you would shop, if you go to a shop and there's a gay shopkeeper, or a gay guy or girl who sells stuff, which is, I don't really know how would you know that, but that's another question. So would you buy from that person? Fine, that's not a problem. There's no problem to buy something from a gay person, or it's like 70% doesn't have a problem with it. If you visit the doctor who is gay, that's okay as well. Or lesbian, it's the same. If your child was gay, that was a really personal question. So if you found out that your child was gay, would you feel worse about your child? And that's where we saw actually a big improvement in the last 2017. So there we actually saw this kind of stuff was somehow changing for the better. But what goes worse is to allow the child to watch a TV show which depicts same-sex relationships. So Will and Grace, for example. So would you allow your child to watch it? And again, here, why it's going down? It's because of the mostly Russian speakers who have, this has dropped to like 7% of only Russian speakers would allow it, whereas Estonians would be like 50%. Okay, fine. So we see that there is a story of this LGBT acceptance in Estonia that is, has different colors. And it's not just one number that we say that, okay, these people support, that Estonians are homophobic or not homophobic, or Estonians are tolerant or intolerant, because you have to say that, treating Estonians as a whole group, or Estonian citizens or Estonian people, that's not good either. And here I took some more, so this is now the marriage question, which has become relevant again because of this idea that people want to make this constitutional amendment. The church had an idea in Estonia that we should put into the constitution that the marriage is between one man and one woman. Here also Estonia is the only Central Eastern European country that doesn't have this. So we are special. Hopefully we keep that way. But you can see that there's an improvement. That's actually a good thing, that there is a improvement here, and where we can see women are more tolerant, and we see from the age groups. So this is something, I don't try to somehow, be ageist here, but it's just the numbers are as they are, and it is, it's the question of perhaps the life experience of these people living at a time when homosexuality was criminalized. So obviously the tolerance levels are lower. And here's the language question as well, where you can see that it's really divided. So Estonian society is segregated by nationality or by ethnic groups, and this also is visible here. Just to say a few words also about the LGBT legal situation, because we are going to have a panel that is also going to discuss these things. So for those of you who are not following or haven't been following what's happening in Estonia, so basically we're in this situation where in 1992, same-sex sexual activity was decriminalized after the fall of the totalitarian Soviet Union. Then the age of consent was equalized between same-sex and different-sex activity in 2001. There has been a discrimination protection in the Equal Treatment Act since 2009. There is going to be basically a change, or hopefully it will be changing to include also other areas except outside of the workplace. There is no marriage equality, but there is a Civil Partnership Act that the panel will also discuss, which has actually, it's quite positive. It's quite progressive as Civil Partnership Acts go. It allows intra-couple adoptions, for example, which is not the case for many civil partnerships. But there is a problem with implementing acts, which are missing, and the parliament hasn't done their job. So what we've had to do, and some other people have had to do, is to try to help people to go to court and actually get those rights that they were promised with the Civil Partnership Act, but were not actually able to, they were not able to exercise because there were no implementing acts. And as you know, the officials, usually they need a paper to do something. So if there is nothing on paper, there is no rule, and you go there with a court judgment, they don't usually, they might not be so happy. And that also is the case because in Estonia, we are the e-Estonia, right? We have a digital society, so everything you are and everything you can do comes down to whether you are somewhere in the register or not. And if your partnership is not registered, if your child is not registered as your child, then it becomes very complicated in the digital society. Okay, and then there are hate speech laws which are ineffective, but equally so with other grounds, and no blood donations for men who have sex with men. And now, just to finish, we say a few words about our work in the Human Rights Center, what we try to do to make these things better, just to have a short self-promotion before we come to questions. So what we do is we are a human rights organization, so we do these kind of strategic litigation cases. A lot of our work is actually to do with asylum area. We constantly go to courts to try to get people to exercise their rights. Most recently, there's been cases of Jehovah's Witnesses coming from Russia to Estonia because Jehovah's Witnesses were banned in Russia. So now they want to get asylum in Estonia. Estonia doesn't want to give them asylum, and so we go and fight for those Jehovah's Witnesses to get them asylum. We do advocacy and lobbying, we do human rights awareness raising, and we work as watchdog. We also have specific things, like the Diversity Charter, which we have 100 companies, organizations that are part of, including the biggest employers in Estonia. That's actually a really good success story, and we see that there's businesses who want to do something for tolerance, which we never thought that would be the case in Estonia. But it's actually a successful thing, so even if the politicians are doing nothing, the businesses are actually doing something. We have a Diversity Day in April, which we celebrated last month. And we now also have a special diversity label. So what I wanted to just open or just say to you or show to you or tell these little tidbits here and there is that, first of all, tolerance matters. Tolerance is not just something that's nice to have, but it actually has a link with the development of the society. The way how you can measure tolerance is look at the gay index, or looking at tolerance against towards gay people, lesbian people, and we see that in Estonia, based on this indicator, it is something that is holding us back. If everything's fine with technology, talent, brilliant as well, but if we really want to improve our chances in this new world, the new techno-economic paradigm, we need to work on this tolerance stuff and take it seriously. Thanks.
Stay here. Thank you, Kari. And we've got a few questions on Slido as well. Just a reminder, those who didn't catch me before, you can go to a platform called Slido, slido.com. Just type in a password. It's capital X 187, and then type the question. But of course, if you want to ask in person, that's also fine. We've got a microphone here. It will go around. But I'll start with a first question from Slido platform. How is South Korea so innovative and successful while the society is not tolerant, especially towards LGBT people? How would you comment on that?
It is, well, I'm not a specialist on South Korea, but we do see that things are moving forward with tolerance in that region as well. I don't know if you know about Taiwan. Taiwan will get same-sex marriages soon. So it's the first country from that East Asia region. So sure, if you look at the technology, talent, and tolerance, perhaps South Korea is not so tolerant from this one side of it. But it hasn't really, it is something that is, how can I put this? The East Asian development models, I can talk about those for an extended period of time, but I think that's not the question here. There was something that was driving these countries for a period of time, and they made lots of success. And that was pretty good. And tolerance is a part of it, because even if it's not tolerance towards for gay people, if you take Singapore, for example, it's not very tolerant for gay people, but it enforces tolerance, like religious tolerance, very, very strongly. You know, try to say something bad about a religion in Singapore, you will be in jail. So it is a mixed picture, and of course this one index doesn't show anything, but yes, so that's I cannot answer the question without further.
That is fine. This is one of the questions that we're probably going to discuss later in the panel as well. I know Mick has got a few words on that, but okay. And so, okay, let's take another question we have from quickly. Should intolerance be tolerated?
This is the age-old question, like this repressive tolerance, this totalitarian tolerance going to attack you. If I look at it from a neutral, let's say, lawyer's perspective, and I take the European Court of Human Rights case law, then the European Court of Human Rights case law says that intolerance should not be tolerated, in the sense that you do not protect such human rights or activities that happen under the banner of human rights, which are actually targeting other people's human rights and want to take them away from them. So you protect human rights for those who want to live up to the ideals of human rights and who want to promote and enhance human rights. But in some cases, it is, you use those human rights or what you say that are human rights actually to undermine or take away rights from others. And then that's really not good.
Okay, we've got one question here from the audience. If you can just please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, my name is Agustin. I've been living in Estonia for about 4 years. I came as a student in 2013. And I really advocate, I really like history. I know a lot about Estonia. I was actually one of the first Soviet republics I knew about when I was a kid, when the Soviet Union dissolved. I was, I think, 11, 12 years old when I knew about the existence of Estonia again. So, we talk about today about LGBT rights, but there is one topic I would like to bring to ask you as a leader of human rights in Estonia. So, I would like to bring some context and then ask you a question. I prepare some text here. So, Estonian World published in April this year about the Estonian Internal Security Service 2017 review. In such review, it is mentioned that the Kremlin has a policy to divide Estonian society. In particular, such foreign policy from Russia aims at influencing the Russian-speaking youth in this country, in Estonia. As well, according to a study commissioned by the United Kingdom Foreign Commonwealth Office, from the 3 Baltic nations, the Estonian Russian-speaking minority is the one that feels the most left out. I've been living here for some time, and I oftentimes hear derogatory terms against the Russian minority. And my question is there efforts in this country to include the Russian minority in the political class, in the ranks of political parties, in government agencies, in human rights organizations? For example, yesterday I reviewed the directory of this organization is the Chancellor of Justice, and I couldn't see the Russian, the demographics of Estonia represented there. And my question is, what's going on?
That's what's going on is yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for pointing this out. I think that's something that should be pointed out whenever we discuss topics of tolerance and issues like that, because, and I think I talked about this quite a lot also in my presentation, that Estonia is a segregated society. And this segregation is not for the benefit of the Russian minority or Russian speakers. It's for the benefit of the Estonian speakers. And the question is whether it's, I don't think there is an intentional exclusion in the sense of someone doing it in terms of, you know, having a policy of excluding it. That's like, you know, that's not, it's not really an apartheid like South Africa used to be. But there is the segregation, and there is also, you know, lack of opportunity, lack of representation, lack of economic, political inclusion. Many of the parties don't you know, include Russian speakers, don't want to talk to them, and some of them want to actually use this ethnic divide or segregation to advance their political goals. So it's working for them. And I think for us, it's just to try to educate people, and I think the younger generation is much less, you know, much less interested or much less following this segregation, but that is one of the challenges for Estonia as well. That's also something that brings, that keeps Estonia from developing. I think I wrote about this just a few weeks ago. I wrote in Äripäev, the business newspaper, about statelessness in Estonia, that we should really get rid of it, because it's like Soviet Union fell apart so much time ago, but we still have thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of stateless people in Estonia, which is not normal. And the Estonian state has a responsibility to do something about that. So yeah, it's a question that is, you know, up there, and we know about it, and we work with this as well.
Okay, thank you. I will probably might come back to this question later, because we've got at least one politician here in the panel, so he can probably, Taavi Rõivas can comment on that later on. But quickly, comment from Tina here on Slido platform. The South Korea question might be somewhat answered by parts of Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, exploring other cultural differences that promote success. Thank you for the comment. Also, quick question here. From Polina, was this limits of acceptability survey done on a stratified or a convenience sample regarding?
This was the same study, so it's the same 1,000 representative sample study. So all of these Estonian results for us were from the same study, so it was nothing to do with convenience. It was done by a professional polling company, and it cost a lot.
Thank you. Okay, one more question there. Thank you.
It's always weird to hear your own voice. I'm Carl, I'm from here, but for the last 7 years I lived in London, Sydney, and now in Berlin. But I run my company from here, so I come here at least once or twice a month. Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues over here that needs to be tackled, but I think the main issue over here is building the self-confidence for gay men. If you do have the confidence, I think a lot of people will speak about these issues, and what are the specific things we could actually do to build confidence for men to come out and speak for their own rights. I think at the end of the day, it's ourselves that need to make that change, so it can't be someone else sort of like coming in. So we don't have a community, people don't speak about these things. A lot of gay men usually have just themselves to rely on. So what are these key things that we could do, yeah, to boost confidence?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's an important question. It's in terms of, and it's not only about gay men, or it's also about the Russian, you know, minority. It's also about the disabled people. It's also about women. It's all groups that nobody can do these things for you. Nobody can fight these fights for you, but, you know, kind of you have to fight those fights. You have to be in the front. We've had these issues in the Human Rights Center with our work as well. We have to always balance how much do we speak as a human rights organization on behalf of a specific group, and how much do we actually give voice to the group, give voice to the people who actually want to, or are interested in protecting their rights. So it's about community building, and there are some great organizations in Estonia, the LGBT Union, for the other groups, there's lots of organizations that try to make this work. But as always, and in Estonia, obviously, it's also very difficult for Estonians to work with each other, even if they're not gay, even if they're just trying to work with each other, but it's sometimes very difficult to cooperate. And even though we are a very small country and we have very few people, even in a very small field, like the NGO field, there are a lot of people who just don't like each other and don't talk to each other, and so it kind of keeps down this possibility to cooperate and build coalitions and try to work together. What we've tried to do is, and this is not really answering your question, I know, but I think that is something that it has to come from within the community, so you can't kind of force it upon. And you have to build this confidence somehow, and I think the Pride parade was a great thing. That was building this confidence, and there's a lot of other things that you can do.
Thank you. Okay, one more question there, and then we'll try to wrap it up, because we're slightly behind the schedule. Have you got the mic?
Hello. Yep. My name is Mark, and I'm from Romania, living here in Estonia for a few years already. I have a question about, as I understand now, the law says that the family is based on the marriage of two spouses. So about the change of the marriage should be between a man and a woman, what would you answer, what would your vote go, and why?
For me, if I understand you quickly, I just make a correction here that it's in the constitution it doesn't say at the moment. The constitution of Estonia is gender neutral, has always been. But it's the family law which says that a marriage is contracted between a man and a woman, and that marriages that are contracted between two same-sex persons are not valid. So that's actually something that they added to the law because of a technical issue where you could have a transgender person changing their gender and then technically being two same-sex people married, and that was a problem for Estonia, so they wanted to specifically exclude that possibility. But of course my vote would be not to try to, I would not go to, if we have already a great constitution, we don't need to make it a homophobic constitution.
Why is that? Why do you think it's important to have it gender neutral or allowing same-sex marriages?
Well, there's two things. First of all, this is a question of such detail that I don't think that this is a place for the constitution where you regulate general stuff. And the other thing is that it goes against the spirit of the constitution, because the constitution has a very, as a liberal democratic country, the constitution has a very important part that is a protection of the equal treatment. And it kind of goes against the spirit that we specifically put in the constitution this specific exception now, because some people don't like gay people.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Just quickly, last question for you. Is tolerance selective?
Sure. You tolerate good things and you don't tolerate bad things. You tolerate, of course it's selective. I can hate people that I don't like. There's no problem with that. But of course, if I start hating people just because of their, gender or sex, or because of their ethnicity, then that's not good. But if I don't like people because they are lazy or because they're not very clever, that's fine. You don't have to like people who are lazy or don't want to work or all this kind of stuff you can do. There's no, of course it's selective tolerance because you can't tolerate everything. You can't, how do you live like that? No.
Thanks for this. We've got a few more questions, but we'll come back to them after the break during the panel. Just during the break, we'll have 10 minutes break. If you want to think, we've got one question for you as well, for everyone. The question is simple. Is Estonia tolerant in your opinion or not? It's good chance to get to know each other if you don't know each other around the tables. And then we'll discuss those things just after the break. So thank you again, Kari.
great as this. Now the young crown kings of fantastic music. Beat that. Mama said don't fix it on the airplane. Mama said don't take it on the freight train. Yeah. Mama said don't care if you bought, stick it on your arm. Don't care if you shoot. Anything that makes you feel good, boy, is good.
Hello, hello. So we're going to carry on with the panel discussion now. Just to let you know, obviously lots of questions on slide also regarding the Russian question. We are coming back to the Estonian-Russian question in a separate event. We have had it we are planning to organize it, but just it's in a queue, so we'll come back to that. But now I'm very delighted to welcome here Kristiina and Sarah Raud, Taavi Rõivas and Mikk Salu. Kristiina Raud works as the community coordinator at the Estonian LGBT Association. She has also been involved in different grassroots LGBT and feminist initiatives and organized the Baltic Pride Festival. Sarah Raud is an American living in Estonia. She has been a part of LGBT initiatives in the United States as well as in Estonia, while her main professional focus is in the field of arts and sculpture. Taavi Rõivas was the Minister of Social Affairs from 2012 to 2014 and Estonia's Prime Minister from 2014 to 2016, currently serving as the member of Estonian Parliament. He was the Prime Minister when Estonia passed the Cohabitation Act, or Civil Partnership Act in other words, in 2016, allowing same-sex couples legally register their partnership. He showed an active support to the LGBT community before and after the law was passed in the country's parliament. Tonight he will also share experience, what was it like to be Prime Minister at the time and why he supported that. And fourth, we got Mikk Salu. Mikk is a renowned journalist who is currently writing for Eesti Ekspress, the largest weekly newspaper in Estonia. Mikk represents an opinion that tolerance and diversity cannot be forced on the society, if I'm correct, but you can correct me later on if I'm wrong. And the tolerance does not always right away equal competitiveness. So welcome here. And we start with Kristiina and Sarah. Maybe if you can just share your story. What happened? You married in the United States and moved to Estonia, and it seems that the Estonia doesn't really want one of you here, or both of you here, at the same while at the same time promoting Estonia as the destination to come. What's the story then?
Hi everyone. So yeah, we met in 2014, did the long distance back and forth relationship for a while, and then decided to get married in the States for all the typical lovey reasons, but also hoping that maybe one day it would actually help us live on the same continent for longer than 3 months at a time. The law in Estonia hadn't been passed yet, so we really didn't have any alternatives. But also we just wanted to get married. And since the states had just legalized it nationally, it only made sense to do it in Sarah's hometown or home city. And then we did, and then we kind of put it aside and thought, okay, once we're ready to move in together and everything's settled, then we can start the process of legally trying to live together. We knew it wouldn't be super easy, but little did we know. So luckily, the timing worked out for us. So someone who knew someone put us in contact with the Human Rights Center, who were just looking for a couple who would be willing to publicly speak about their story, their experience with getting residency for the foreign spouse. We applied because we're married and it should be enough of a reason, but it wasn't. So the application was denied. And then we went to court. It was a long process that now unfortunately is over and we didn't win. A lot was said and kind of determined and picked at during that process. So the main argument against us became the fact that I was still a resident of Estonia at the moment of getting married. So it's as if I just went to the States just to get married, which wasn't true. I went there to see my partner. But yeah, Estonian law applies to me because I've always been a resident of Estonia, and that puts me at a disadvantage compared to some other people who have lived away from Estonia for longer than I did.
Sarah, do you want to also add some comment?
I have no idea.
Okay. So, sorry, can I just clarify? So what the current situation is, I understand Supreme Court didn't recognize the...
Yes. So we had two parallel cases, more or less. One of them was like the side case that gave Sarah residency like in advance, so to speak, for the duration of the court process, so she wouldn't have to leave every 3 months, because that's financially, emotionally just draining and just not a reasonable way of doing things. So we had a stable year, which was nice for a change. And then, so through that case where she got that approved, the Supreme Court says that same sex couples deserve the same protections as any other family, which was nice to hear, but that didn't help our main case. And then the main case went through all the stages of court, and then the Supreme Court actually decided not to take our case on at all, thus implementing the decision of the Circuit Court, which basically said that Estonian law applies to me, there's nothing that can be done about it, so it basically became a question of residency more than marriage.
And so, and you plan, again clarifying, you're planning now to register in Estonia your partnership?
Yes, because in one instance the Supreme Court said that the law is valid, and then in our instance the court said that we are not married in this country, so if you put 2 and 2 together, technically we should be able to apply for residency based on a signed cohabitation contract. We've learned from experience that it's probably not going to be that smooth, but that is the plan, and it's going to be happening pretty soon, so we'll see how that goes. But with the help of the Human Rights Center, once again, we are ready to go to court if necessary.
Okay. And so, Sarah, you're here now on just on a normal, is it 3 months visa or something?
Basically, yeah, I've got about 3 months where I can stay, and then we'll sign the paperwork and like see if it's going to be valid, so I can stay for a little bit longer. But as of right now, I'm a tourist again.
And how do you feel? I mean, it's was that something you expect? Kind of. Well, I guess you didn't expect that. I mean, well, has it changed your perception about Estonia, or how you feel, or do you still want to?
Well, going into all of this, we always like knew that there was a risk. Like there is always that possibility that you never assume that everything's going to be okay. So like I knew that there was a possibility of the court case being thrown out and then me being right back where I started, and it is unsettling, it is exhausting, it does like produce a lot of anxiety and whatnot, but ultimately it's not like I wasn't prepared for it. So, I mean, at this point, it's just taking things like step by step. And there was like probably the worst moment where I thought that I was going to have to jump on a plane like immediately that day when I first found out that that the case didn't go through, and it's like trying to figure out exactly where do I go, So it's nerve-rattling, but. You do it.
Well, if you briefly compare your, you grew up in the United States and you're from there. I mean, how would you compare the States and Estonia in terms of LGBT equality? Obviously, things have changed over there as well over the years, and during President Obama's tenure, I think it was it was married. The gay marriage was legalized, right? But whereas Donald Trump might not be so.
He knows that he can't take it away. The LGBT community is way too strong in the States. Not to mention, we hit where the money is. So that's one strategy that has definitely worked in the States, as far as legalizing same-sex marriage on a federal level. It's just that there's so many of very, very active people within the community itself that they're too strong. So the idea of Trump doing anything about it whatsoever is pretty much null and void. It's just not possible, and he knows it. But as far as the differences between Estonia and like the states are concerned, I think probably like the most obvious one is that Estonians aren't as abrasive, stereotypically speaking, as Americans tend to be.
They're not what? Sorry, I didn't get you.
Abrasive,
Okay,
like
mm-hmm.
outspoken. Like Americans tend to, like if it's good or bad, if they're homophobic or if they're really supportive, they're more likely to stop you on the street and tell you. And unfortunately, when it comes to the homophobic ones, that means that like I've dealt with plenty of very opinionated, outspoken homophobes before, and you know, definitely have had my fair share of comments that have just been flung out of car windows to me when I'm like walking down the street. Estonians don't do that, which is nice. But legally speaking, as far as like laws and whatnot are concerned, obviously the states are a lot more progressive in that sense as of right now. Hopefully that doesn't backtrack anytime soon. But like I said, I don't think that's possible. But here, I don't actually deal with homophobia. Like, I haven't really yet. I mean, hopefully I don't, but Estonians won't just, like, come at you like that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, they post anonymous comments only
Yeah.
online, but really it is a good thing about the Estonians. They're not aggressive people. They're not going to attack anyone on the street, and so this is a good thing. By the way, just quickly, we did the statistics. There is about 1/3 of Estonians here tonight, and 2/3 of from people from other countries. But coming to Taavi Rõivas, who was the prime minister when the Civil Partnership Act was passed. So maybe you can just reflect a little bit about the time, because obviously it was a very divisive issue in Estonian society. Kari probably knows the exact statistics, but if I remember correctly, I think roughly about 60% or so people in public opinion polls were against it. And why you supported it, knowing that it could be actually a political risk for you and your party? Just those who don't know, Taavi Rõivas belongs to the Reform Party. And what did it mean to you? And I know you publicly showed support when the law was passed. You actually went to the big party that celebrated it, and so maybe you can comment on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for this opportunity. Just first to reflect what was said before, I think it must be awfully painful for you to, first of all, to go through this in order to just to kind of register your family in a way, and especially hard as Estonians are not very outspoken. It must be very difficult to speak about it publicly in Estonian society. I know it must be difficult, but I think it helps to a great deal. And what we don't have in Estonia, or we have much less in Estonia than in probably in the United States, in many other countries, is people who are very open about it and talk about that, you know, hello, we exist. There are different types of families in Estonia today already, have been for quite some time. So this is a fact, and if you talk about it, I think it helps. It helps to politicians to understand things better, and helps, which is of course even more important, the society to understand that. Now, what Kari was speaking, I enjoyed it very much because he was very no, this is the word, I can't, yeah, what exactly the word. So he was very kind of science-based, and I think if you look at the studies, you know, generally I think we are quite like Finns as what it comes to our mentality, and there is one huge difference. And of course, in these surveys, we saw that Finns are some of the most open people, and we are third from the bottom. I think the main difference to try to understand why we are different, not to justify, but just to try to understand and trying to explain, is probably the 50 years of Soviet occupation, where we were told that homosexuality is a crime. We were told that there were many other things that actually are awful to the freedoms that we are used to in our current society. And the understanding in the society, in a wider society, has been there perhaps for no more than 26 years that we have been independent again after this awful occupation. And it reflects also the question of whether there is fair in the society or not, because we have to remember, or some people do remember, that's the fact, some people very much remember, that in the 40s, 100,000 people were sent away and 400,000 were brought in, and even if you are the most tolerant nation in the world, that will shock you. And of course the pain unfortunately lives in the society still. Now, if you come to the spring 2014, I think the time was definitely there to understand that yes, there are different families, and yes, they need rights as well. I think the general understanding, just trying to measure the heat of the society, the general understanding was that if you even try to talk about a marriage, you will hit the wall like 200 kilometers per hour, and it's very fast suicide. So in order to do something, the thing called cohabitation law was kind of made up, and I'm not sure if it was strategically very wise to say that hetero families can use it as well, or I personally don't think that this is a very good option for to have some kind of middle layer between marriage and just living together for I don't think actually personally that different sex families need it that much, and that perhaps missed or kind of mixed the understanding a bit. But today I'm proud that despite the very difficult context, despite that it was hugely unpopular thing to do, that we found 40 people out of 101 in the parliament who were eager to do that. The reason why we don't have it properly, why we don't have the, what's the word for implementing acts exactly, is that we would need to have 51% of parliament saying yes. And in Estonian history, God knows we have tried. There has never been a parliament, including the current one, that has 51% of parliamentarians supporting the issue in the way that they would lift their hands or push green button. So we found 40, and that was more than against. It was a hugely close call. It was very difficult to get there. There was some hand twisting involved, I have to admit, in several parties. It's a huge pity that one big party made the decision that even though they have some members who would actually want to support that, they are not allowed to. That actually changed things for worst. Perhaps we would have been much closer to 50%. But having said that, I think cohabitation law at the current version is simply the best we can do with the current kind of political situation. I think in these kind of situations, if you obviously see a need for that, politicians have two ways to act. Either to follow the public opinion, which is always the easiest, but everybody tries to do that, so you won't stand out doing that. Or you try to lead the way, which is hugely risky, but it might be very rewarding also if you talk purely kind of politics and not what you actually believe that you should stand for. Pragmatically speaking, as you said, it was much easier to be against or just try to be in the toilet when the vote is. So that's honest reflection.
Thank you. Just quickly, again, for those people who haven't been in Estonia for a long time, there's one party called Estonian Conservative People's Party, called EKRE, and they are heavily against that law, and they said that if they get to power, they would abolish the law completely, let alone passing the implementing acts. And their popularity is increasing. Next year they might be in the parliament. Sorry, they are already in the parliament, but at the moment they have 7 seats. Next year they might have 20. There has been a talk of possibly forming a coalition with the Reform Party. Now, I know you're not the leader of this Reform Party anymore, but what would be your red line if your party, decided to form the coalition with EKRE?
I think this speculation doesn't stand any more grounds than any other possible coalition. I think this is just something that is easy to spin to take votes away from one or another. But very practically speaking, most of Reform Party and Social Democrats today, tomorrow, yesterday would vote for. Also in the tomorrow's parliament. I don't see, unfortunately, a chance that we have those two parties more than 51 votes in the next parliament. That's just a kind of sociological, not political assessment, but sociological. That's how it looks right now. EKRE, who is becoming stronger, they will never vote for it. Pro Patria, hard to imagine voting, and they are declining, so I don't see any votes coming from there. So practically speaking, the only way of getting 51% is if Centre Party would kind of abolish the previous chairman time ban, where they were basically saying that we will throw out anyone who will dare to vote for it. Most of Centre Party is organically very much against it. Partly because of the ethnic divide also being very much, like Russian speakers being very much more against it, but also some other reasons. But if they would, have like 7 people for, that could be a possibility. If this will ever happen, I don't know. That's up to them. Who is in the government, I think doesn't play a role in this. Because at all these talks that we had during my government, that we had, actually during both of my governments, one was before election with 4 parties in the parliament, the other one was after elections with 6 parties. Actually, we tried to get votes from all, and we understood that one government partner would never vote. So basically, kind of, it's across the board game. It's not dependent on who's in the government.
Thank you. Okay, Mick, you're a journalist in a very popular weekly newspaper in Estonia. What do you think, what's the role of media in the society when it comes to debate over a question whether there should be more or less diversity and tolerance? I think the mic is on, you just have to keep it on close to you. And the other thing is, we discussed before the event the correlation between diversity and tolerance and competitiveness, and you brought an example what actually one of the audience members also asked about South Korea and Taiwan, etc. And I think you also said that those countries are examples of
economics is very speculative field, and this is just a speculative theory what Kari Kasper presented. I am simplifying, but if I understood correctly, Kari, you wanted to say that tolerance drives prosperity. It's a bit simplified. I am not sure that causality drives in this way. I do think that prosperity or competitiveness or economic growth, they are actually driving tolerance. So it's another way around. But like I said, it's a speculation. Another question, what is the role of the media? Well, the role of the media is like always, you have to give a voice to different opinions. Estonian media is not, I would say, very strongly taking sides. I would say that Eesti Päevaleht, this is one of the daily newspapers, is left to center and more progressive. Postimees, this is the largest daily newspaper, is, I would, right to center, I guess, and a little bit more, I'm not sure that they are conservative, but they are, yeah, right to center.
Okay. Sorry, just a quick reminder that Slido is still going on, so you can post the questions there as well. I just take one question quickly from Slido. I'm not quite sure if I understand this question properly, but anyway, the question is that should the teaching materials teaching tolerance to queer community? How? Is the question that tolerance to queer community or the community in general? I don't know. Is the person in the audience who asked that question? Oh, okay. Do you want to comment on that quickly? We get a microphone to you as well. Sorry about that. And just briefly introduce yourself as well. Maybe you can just comment on that.
I'm from China, so my name is Jie. I'm an opera singer. So my question is actually, should this teaching material in school teaching the tolerance to the LGBT community to the children? And what are the, if so, and what are the information could be delivered in the earlier, let's say, primary school teaching material, if it is?
Do you want to comment on that, Kristen?
Yeah, working at the LGBT Association, we do come in contact with schools and school curricula and different subjects. So the subjects that at least technically are supposed to cover different like family models and different sexualities and gender are subjects like terviseõpetus, like human studies and social sciences and health sciences. And technically, in the state curriculum, there it does say that teachers should have to cover different family models, different sexualities, so that is connected to the LGBT community and its reality as well. However, the current situation is that it's pretty much up to the teacher how and whether they teach it at all. So sometimes it might be even better if a teacher doesn't touch on the subject at all, because we've had students come to our community center and say that their teacher says that it's a sickness, it's a disease, that people like that should be put to jail. So maybe in that sense it's better if the teacher doesn't cover the topic. So it definitely needs to be like more evened out and some sort of monitoring in place to see how it's being taught and if it's being taught. Because since it isn't the curriculum, it means that it has been agreed that it should be taught, because the fact is that different families do exist. Statistically speaking, in an average Estonian classroom, which is usually about 30 people, there is at least one student from the LGBT plus community. So if that one student is in class and doesn't feel safe, that's already a problem. It's not a matter of opinion or your feeling of acceptability towards, let's say, homosexual people or transgender people. Is just the fact that there is a child in your classroom who doesn't feel safe in that environment, and a school is supposed to be a safe educational environment. So just keeping that priority in mind. What we do, some people might say, or have said, that the LGBT Association does gay propaganda at schools. I can confirm that we do not push ourselves on any schools. We only go to schools to do seminars if we're invited. And invitations come from different people. Sometimes it's a student who has been to our event or has been to our seminar for a youth organization, for example, and they think it's important enough to cover in class, and they will invite us. They will talk to their either their teacher or somebody from the school staff, get permission for it, and we'll come and talk. Usually we talk to high schoolers. Sometimes a teacher will invite us. Sometimes the school principal will say that it's not allowed for us to come. Sometimes they'll allow it, but then after the seminar we'll be told that why are you doing this propaganda in our school? There's no gay people in our school. I've never met a gay person. This is complete pseudoscience. And then our educator will be, well, hello, nice to meet you. I'm a lesbian. Let's talk about it. So the reactions are very different, and the kind of the language divide also comes into play very much because this is no official statistics, this is purely from my own personal experience of working at our community center, but I'm the one who deals with youth groups, with students, with the center's visitors. So we will have interns or volunteers or just people interested from middle school and high school saying that their teachers encourage them to write research papers on LGBT topics. I didn't finish high school that long ago, and I don't remember any teacher saying you should write a research paper on it. But they're encouraged. But that's mostly for Estonian-speaking schools. Kids from Russian language schools are the ones who will say that their teachers think it's an illness, or that they hear more slurs. Obviously, Estonian language schools aren't perfect either. There's lots of problems there too. But that's one place where the kind of cultural divide already takes place. So it's from the home, but also the school. So kids grow up in very, very different environments.
Actually, that also links to one of the other question is about young Estonian Russians. You know, the question is whether they are more tolerant or not. Kari maybe knows, but that also brings to the school system. There is, this is something I would like to ask again, Taavi. There is an idea circulating in the society now that Estonians and Russians children should be together in the same school. Do you think that's a good idea? Would that, kind of help with that question as well?
Well, first of all, I just thought, how this sexuality was taught 23 years ago when I was in 9th grade. It was 1994. Yeah, 24 years ago. Basically, it went like that. We have this, all other things, where our lungs and what is your hand and how...
Sorry, just Mike, maybe a little bit
how
closer.
biology works in general. And when you come to the sexuality part or sex part, then the teacher says that, yeah, you should probably figure it out somehow and turn the page. So that's how it happened in my generation. I truly hope that it's better now. My daughter is 9, and when she was 6, and I think that's a bit of kind of speaking about the role of family as well. When she was 6, we discussed that topic first time, that also same-sex people do get married. My wife and I attended to our friends and colleagues' wedding in Luxembourg, and we talked about it with our daughter, and kind of, I don't think she needs any additional explanation from the school, and I think she understands that topic quite well, and even 6 years olds actually are perfectly ready to talk about those topics if the parents are ready, and that's, I think, bigger problem in Estonian society, whether the parents are ready. Now, talking about language in schools, my opinion is that the only divide Russian-speaking children have, or Russian-speaking people living in Estonia have, is a language barrier. If they speak Estonian language, I honestly don't think there is any barrier to be successful in the society. Sometimes they have competitive advantage because anyone younger than me usually doesn't speak good Russian if you are an Estonian. I'm just kind of thinking that I'm in the middle, but anyone who's older usually speaks quite decent Russian. And that's, of course, historic reason. So in my opinion, we should actually help Russian-speaking children get good language skills in Estonian already when they are in kindergarten. And I think that is hugely helping them to be successful in Estonian society.
Thank you. Mick,
well,
you got something to add?
Yeah, I am quite skeptical that you can teach tolerance, but I guess I am quite skeptical to formal education system at all. If you look the statistics, you see that older generations are more conservative, but their children are much more liberal. So conservative mothers and fathers and liberal children, I do not think that this change has happened because of education. I do think that the most important things are that we see openly gay people, openly gay famous people, we see gay issues in the media, and this is one of the role of the media, and people just get too used to it. That's the main thing what drives this change, not formal education. I am, yeah.
I'd like to add one. Like when I speak about educating people, you know, professionally and also personally, not just formal education, not just like seminars and all that, but educating people also comes from informing people. So if different people are visible, that's also educating yourself on the existence of different people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I agree with this.
So basically talking about role models, and well, the trouble is we among the politicians, we don't have anyone who has actually publicly come out. Why is that? Yeah, so really.
Well, yeah, and it is weird because public actually knows who they are, but they are not. I don't know why they are not coming out of the closet.
If I may just add, it was a huge thing, I think, in a positive way, when in Latvia the Minister of Foreign Affairs came out publicly. I think it must have been as difficult in Latvian society for him as it would have been in Estonian society. So I think probably they feel that time is not ready for them, and they are afraid to be somehow discriminated because of that. I don't know. I just guess why this isn't happening. But luckily, in a way, as I said, I think it's very important to have role models, just like you said also. Luckily, we have quite many people who are well known in the society and who are loved in society, who are in kind of arts and music and theater, and that it's kind of they're more open to admit it or talk about it than politicians for some reason.
But Mick, you mentioned the
Politicians
conservatives.
are stupid sometimes.
But you mentioned the conservatives. I have got a question. Could conservatives change their mind? And I'll bring you an example of the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, who said, that's the quote, "Conservatives believe in the ties that bind us. Society is stronger when we make vows to each other and we support each other. I don't support gay marriage in spite of being a conservative. I support gay marriage because I am a conservative." And just a reminder, it was a conservative government in Britain who legalized gay marriage there.
I think that David Cameron did not change his mind. He was in this position all the time. He just chose the moment to come out this position. I remember that I think that Barack Obama was against gay marriage during when he was elected, and he later changed his position. But I do think that in reality he always supported gay marriage. So people really change their deep political convictions.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think, okay, let's take question. Sorry, we get you a mic.
You've spoken about the Russian-speaking minority. I think there's another minority here in Estonia which is actually quite more significant in its numbers, and that is the rural minority, because I feel that...
Sorry, I'll get you a mic, sorry.
Okay. There's another minority other than the Russian-speaking minority that's significant here in Estonia. Okay, Kari, we're here in Teleskivi land. You're amongst friends. We're all cool here and so on. But there's a sort of hunter-gatherer underneath the skin of lots of Estonians whose soul is in the country. And I feel in Estonia there's a difference between the rural mentality and this urban mentality, and it's in a way it's connected with fears about demography, about the villages are declining in numbers. They feel they might drift into extinction and so on. And in a symbolic sense, same-sex relationships actually kind of sort of stress that anxiety, I think, for people. So I think, okay, we can speak to the urban minority, but we also have to be able to speak in an understanding way with that conservative minority that's in the country, because the Estonian soul is there in the hunter-gatherers. They weren't that excited when the Teutonic Knights came, when the Protestant work ethic came. They're quite happy to be lazy. Actually, they're quite happy to be lazy and sit there with a little bottle and so on. That's okay. They want to be tolerated too.
Anyone wants to comment on that?
I think the Human Rights Center just launched a campaign to like get volunteers in different rural parts.
Just say one comment about that. I think this is also what this Richard Florida's new book is about, that it's not only about the rural people, but it's also part of the city folk. People who live in the cities are also segregated, and part of them are really left behind a lot. That we have these nice gentrified Kalamajas and other areas, but we also have people who are getting worse and worse in the cities. And that's what the crisis is, that this economic inequality, because if you live in Kalamaja, it's likely that you have friends who live also in Kalamaja, and you can get job opportunities, you can get, you can get in with the right people. But if you're not there, if you live in Kopli or you live in Lasnamäe or somewhere.
I do live in Kopli.
Yes.
I'm doing fine.
Then it might be more difficult for you in that way. And we see it in Estonia. I think the demographer, human geography people have done this kind of surveys where they see that in Estonia, we were in the 1990s quite egalitarian. We mixed with each other in terms of income or social class, but now it's really segregated. It's like there are certain people who live in a certain area. So it's not only rural and urban divide anymore, but it's also within the urban, there's also these great areas where it's so nice and beautiful, and there's lots of shops and cafes and people walk, but it's not all like that. So this is what the focus needs to be, how we can kind of mix and match people so that they're not all, living with among their own. So, and yeah, we have now this. We've launched a program of human rights ambassadors. So we're looking for people from the different communities in Estonia to kind of keep us more in contact with, the people, because this is what Eleanor Roosevelt said when human rights, when she introduced the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that human rights do not really matter unless they have real meaning for real people in their homes, their workplaces, their schools, their factories. So if you don't make them matter to the average Joe or the regular folk, everyone, then it doesn't matter what these conventions are. It doesn't matter what we speak here about these things. So sorry about the long diatribe, but I just wanted to answer quickly.
Thank you. Yeah, Tavi, you want to comment on that?
Just a short theory about it. I have figured about that a lot. Why is it so that we have like several Estonians on that issue, but also on how tolerant we are in terms of foreigners or people with different race or different ethnic background or something like that. My best theory that I have come up with so far is we are afraid of the unknowns. If you are in kind of, if you, among your friends, among your family, somebody who you kind of work with is gay and you know that and you're good friends, you're probably much more likely to understand that and accept and you know, see him or her as a person. Probably, and the same is you know, in a way stupidest thing that ever happened in the summer of 2015. Okay, it's stupid of me to say it was stupid, but it's irrational thing that happened in Estonia was that we were afraid of Syrians, refugees. None of us had seen any Syrian, and now I'm exaggerating a bit, besides Steve Jobs. And we had seen Steve Jobs only in TV. And the people were genuinely afraid. What will happen? They are not afraid of, for example, Ukrainians. They are very open for thousands of Ukrainians coming to Estonia to live every year. I don't know. Okay, there is probably less being against that. But being afraid of Syrians, where there is a chance that you have never seen one, that doesn't sound rational. Until you think that probably it's because we haven't met them and we don't know what to expect. And then probably this is being afraid of the unknowns.
Did you want to add something, me? No. Okay. Christina? Okay. There's a question on Slido. Sorry, it didn't update for a while, so I see a lot of questions here. But, okay, there's a question from someone. Many racist, intolerant people accuse me of not tolerating the views. But how can I rebut their argument without bringing up case law? Just to add to this context, when I shared an article about this event in expats in Tallinn group, I was immediately attacked as well by at least 3 people. And well, I just said, you know, I'm not forcing anyone to change anyone's mind or views. I'm a journalist, and regardless what I personally believe, it's about event and moderating. And but despite of that, I was still attacked. Luckily, it was minority. Many people also defended that, and you know the point is we are discussing that. But saying that, with saying that, if anyone wants to say they're against, for example, gay marriage among the audience here, just again, you know, speak up. This is a democratic debate. It's not that we all have to agree on it. It's all also welcome. But coming back to this question, anyone wants to? You want to maybe, Christina?
Well, I just wanted to make. I also noticed that basically here are liberals are talking to liberals, and we are somewhere there's scary conservatives. We know that there are quite a lot of them in Estonia, and we are talking about diversity.
Okay.
That tends to be the pattern, unfortunately.
Sorry, and just quickly before I quote, in fact, tonight we also invited someone from ECRA. In fact, we invited Jaak Madison, who is a member of parliament, the youngest MP there. He couldn't come. I think he almost wanted to come, but he was just busy. And then we invited their second man in the party, Martin Helme, who just said straight away no. So, you know, they actually sometimes refuse to engage, maybe because they see it's not good for them or it doesn't benefit them. You know, their vote doesn't, not maybe here, I don't know.
Or they do not feel comfortable here.
Maybe, but they shouldn't feel either way. I mean, this is because, you know, but yeah, okay.
For a politician, the best territory to be is where you don't have natural supporters. So I would, next time I will see Jaak, I will strongly advise him coming and debating on the issue, but not trying to take his shoes in any way, but just to make a point, I think understanding the temperature of the society is something that is very much needed, both by politicians, by the community, by the people who want to actually achieve the best result. Just give you an example. If we would, as I said, if we would have straight away gone to saying that we need gay marriage from now on, we would not have achieved anything. The same is actually with, you know, kind of dosing the issue and getting the understanding of people. You cannot, if you do it very quickly, if you push it very hard, you will almost definitely have a kind of a setback. So that's something that needs to be understood, and just going in a kind of moderate way probably gives the best results. That's also probably if we would have like a gay parade in Estonia, I think we would unfortunately see that we have outspoken Estonians who kind of say bad things. So it kind of probably they are out there still, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, in terms of the parade, we did organize it for the first time in 10 years last year, and we grossly underestimated the number of supporters and grossly overestimated the number of anti-protesters. So that was a very nice surprise. Yeah, I'll finish. I had a couple of things. The issue of talking to people who already agree with you is very much real. But the question of feeling comfortable somewhere, it's a two-way thing. Like, I would not feel comfortable if Ekre invited me to speak somewhere as well, because they specifically say that they think people like me are whatever they think we are. So why would I feel comfortable around them? Like, decency, common decency works both ways. And I forgot what I had to say. What was the question?
Okay, the question was, many racist, intolerant people accuse me of not tolerating the views.
Right.
But how can I refute their argument without...
Right. So basically, one thing that I really like, I don't know if it's a quote or if I'm quoting correctly, but basically, your freedom ends where other person's freedom begins. So you can say or do whatever you feel is necessary to express yourself, but don't attack somebody else by doing it. So, like, ideally I work in my everyday job for a society that is better for everyone, including people who might not agree with me. But they might have different reasons for having their values and having their strategies and what they want to achieve, politicians or the activists working for so-called traditional family values. But ultimately, what at least I see is that it's a very one-direction street, whereas they put a lot of resources into basically attacking us, or like NGOs or groups like us, whereas we don't attack them back. We work in the further direction of bettering other people's lives. So it's kind of like the arrow is pointing only one direction. And that kind of ultimately creates the question of comfort. Am I comfortable talking to you, or am I comfortable not talking to you and talking to somebody who already agrees with me?
And Sarah, I've got a question for you, again from the audience on Slido. What are our solutions when freedom of speech meets hate speech? Because I know for Americans, freedom of speech is obviously very important. It's in the Constitution. But what's your comment on the hate speech?
Basically, hello. Okay.
You're working now.
Yeah. I think, like, obviously, freedom of speech is important. I don't think to just Americans, but we do talk about it a lot. But I think the main thing is that you can have any opinions that you want. It's like if somebody disagrees with the fact that, I am a homosexual, that's fine. They can disagree. But as long as they don't start attacking me or threatening me, or they're verbalizing it to a point where I actually might worry that they could, or that they're thinking about it. I think that's where the line is drawn. And obviously, I don't agree with homophobia because, of course, but I'm really open, and I've been told that I'm easy to talk to, so I invite anyone who has an issue with homosexuality to, talk to me about it. I can just attempt to change your mind if you actually care to listen. But I think it's important when you have these dialogues, and especially for me, like I said Americans do tend to be very outspoken, and they will talk to you about these things, It's like I've had so many conversations with homophobic people. You know, after a while, you just kind of get used to it, and it doesn't bother me as long as, you know, they're not being threatening. But I think the key to having these dialogues is to be willing to listen, even for me. Like I will always attempt to listen, because if you don't listen, you can't answer the question. You don't give a chance to be persuasive. How are you going to persuade somebody to, you know, agree with you or see your perspective if you're also not capable of listening back? So I think that mutual respect is very important when you're having, when you're having conversations about anything that are controversial. The problem is that a lot of times it doesn't work the other way. I mean, a lot of times people just don't want to see you as a human being. So if they've already made up their mind, then I can't do much to change that. I mean, but yeah, as far as hate speech goes, I think the main thing is like not getting to a point where anybody feels like they're being attacked or threatened or anything. As long as like you can have an intellectual debate, we can talk about it all day.
There's another comment here quickly, just that says sometimes it seems lesbian couples are way more accepted than gay couples in society. Is that true?
Okay, so for this question, like I've analyzed this pretty, like it's important to me. It's an important question. I think that it depends on context. Like it depends on like where you are or who you're talking to, and you have to kind of see like intersectionality here. Gay men tend to deal with more aggressive behaviors from homophobic people. Gay men do have a tendency to be targeted on a physical level. Not saying that women don't do it, because I mean, I've been physically threatened by both straight men and straight women who are homophobic. But typically, from what I can tell, mostly gay men deal with that. But then you have to take into consideration that there is a lot of sexism that's involved, and gay men do tend to kind of be able to go through life in an almost more acceptable way, like they're listened to more. Women, well, typically not. So, I mean, it all depends on context. Lesbianism, or two women together, do tend to be more accepted from straight men because, oh, like it's hot or whatever. But it also depends, like, are we talking about two more heteronormative type of, like, that model fantasy of two women, like, kissing or something, or are we talking about me? Like, I don't know. Depends on how threatened some people are.
Okay, but another important question is, some parties are pushing the idea that questions like these should be put on the public referendum. Well, starting with you, Mick, what do you think of this idea? Obviously, for example, Switzerland, they're having a referendum on, you know, all sorts of topics. But it was argued here in Estonia as well that, you know, if more than half of the population is against it, it should be put on a referendum.
I do generally like Swiss system, their decentralization and low taxes and a lot of referendum. But Estonia is different. I don't think that we should start with this question. In ideal world, yes, I would like Estonia to be more like Switzerland, but we are not. And I do not think that this is the question where we should start making referendums, that this is the starting point how we should become Switzerland.
Well, Tavi, you already said that you think that politicians need to lead, not follow. So I guess this is one of the things where, you know, you cannot really lead, I guess. Well, you can, sort of, during the referendum campaign.
If you don't follow the public opinion at all, then you won't lead for too long, that's for sure as well. But I think minority rights are not subject of referendum in principle. I mean, democracy as such is in a way majorities kind of, I wouldn't say dominance, but somehow still kind of majority deciding over minority. And then, you know, there's more of us, so basically we are getting to decide. So that's why I think minority rights in principle should not be in referendum. Secondly, and I'm glad that now we have a little bit of a debate as well, that I don't agree with Mick in this respect, that I actually don't think that referendums very often or on very many issues are good. I mean, this is an issue that usually people have a good opinion on, they have an understanding of the issue more or less, but still, you know, having referendums too often on many things means that people will actually have to be very well informed about the issue. And I'm not saying that all the politicians are like super smart or super well informed or all the things, but if you do it like as a full-time job, it's your duty to be informed not only about popular things. I think big part of the decisions any executive in politics, including the prime minister, of course, or first and foremost the prime minister, but also parliamentarians need to do, are not popular. And you have to convince people why we do that. And you need to be informed, and you need to actually work on it. So if you just give it to a referendum, it's extremely easy to become populist and say that, you know, who is for, you know, let's say, only 4 working days a week. Let's agree on that. If we have a vote, you know, it's very easy to get, okay, let's have 3 Fridays. But if you kind of try to make sense of that, you know, you understand that this is not coming out of your payroll.
Mick, do you want to comment on that?
I am not talking here pro-referendum. Like I said, I do like a Swiss system in general. You cannot take this one aspect that they are making referendums. If we would have a Swiss system, then referendums would be okay, but we don't have.
Okay, but okay, Christina, yep.
Just on a personal note, as someone who for the past couple of years has been in a situation where people who have never even met me are making decisions for my family, it would be terrifying if a mass of people who don't even know what LGBT means would make decisions about my family, my future, my personal life. So I agree that shouldn't be the question to start with.
By the way, I do think that conservatives overestimate their chances in referendum and liberals underestimating their chances in theoretical referendum in Estonia.
Okay. So anyway, let's quickly, briefly discuss how we're going to see Estonia in future. I mean, what can be done to improve things? You want to start, Christina? You've been working with those issues for a long time.
Yeah,
what should be done?
There's no easy way. I know that what I'm planning on doing and what the people I work with are planning on doing is focusing on providing correct information. Not trying to convince anyone, just trying to inform people so they can make their own decisions. We're not changing like opinions necessarily, we just want people to be informed and make informed decisions. So that means working with the media, which we're doing. That means working with politicians so they can see why it's important. That means working with the education system, so not only choosing a couple of teachers here and there, but already preparing like people who work with children and work with the youth to already be educated on it. It's not going to be like a quick change or a quick solution, but it has to come from within. The same thing that was said, that community building and motivation has to come from within. kind of like opinions and tolerance and all that also has to come from within. So we just want to provide people with the information to base their opinions on, and then everything else will come from that, hopefully.
And also, okay, yeah, sorry. Go on.
No, I lost my track. Were you done? Do I get the same question?
If you want to comment on that, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, you know, you also got the perspective from someone who came to this country, so it's a very good perspective.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I think as far as specific to the LGBT community, I think that it does stem mainly from the community itself, and I think, like, I mean, as far as tolerance in general goes, whether it's racism or like classism or any type of discrimination thing or anything that you could be intolerant towards, I think it's important for people to actually be open. Obviously, you can't hide the color of your skin if you're talking about that, but I think it's important for people to actually be open about it and not to hide, and to be open to having like difficult conversations and just not trying to be invisible, because if that's the case, then nobody ever gets educated and nobody learns, nobody sees any other experiences other than their own, and they're safe to make all of the assumptions about somebody else's life when they don't actually have all of the knowledge. So yeah, I think that's probably what I think is like the most powerful change, or like thing that could motivate change for the better.
Okay, yeah. Tavi?
Well, what you just said is actually, you know, just reminding what you said in the beginning, that we Estonians, as stereotypically, and I very much agree with it, are not very open about our personal life. We are not very open about who we are. So basically, I agree that it means coming out of your comfort zone, which is very difficult, but sometimes very rewarding. Now, I think in society, good examples and seeing that there are people within us, or like in all our community, and being open about it helps a lot. Purely politically, I think we should take kind of good size measured steps, hopefully with every parliament. I think there is no lack of political leadership in that. There is no lack of understanding that it needs to be done. It's simply the question of where the balance is in every specific kind of parliament, kind of 101. Currently, you know, as I said, we have tried to do the best to have 101 votes to have those acts as well, and just to perhaps also make some adjustments so that it's less bureaucratic obstacles and so forth. But you know, with the current situation, I wouldn't even try anymore. Let's see what the next parliament brings. I'm very cautiously optimistic, not too optimistic, unfortunately.
Mick?
I am still wondering why we do not have openly gay politicians. They are the most powerful men and women in Estonia. They have a lot of power. They have... What are they afraid of?
Difficult to say, I guess. But okay, quickly. Sorry, so quite a lot of questions later again, and we tried. I tried to ask a few more. This is very specific question. Is about. Sorry, some people concern about male to female, in brackets, fake transgender people are potentially becoming sex predators to women. How do we define the real and fake trans? Can anyone answer that question? Christina, you've been working with the transsexual people as well. Are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, not the best thing to speak for trans people, but I do work with them a lot. Those concerns cover anyone from just an average person from the street up to politicians who are also very concerned when we talk to them about changing laws to make it more humane for trans people. There will, like, if we do change the laws, so speaking from a legal perspective, it won't be as easy as people might think. There are still processes and measures in place. Just right now, the problem is that there's too many of them. So the current situation, for example, is that a person who wants to legally change their gender has to go through physical changes as well. So not all trans people want to do it, but in order to change your gender here on your documents, you have to go through hormone therapy, for example. And that means living up to several years in a situation where your physical appearance and all your papers don't add up. So you have to come out to every bank teller, to every shopkeeper, just anyone who has anything to do with looking at your document. You have to come out every single time, and that is even more dangerous for trans people than it is for gay people. It's just uncomfortable, to say the least. And what people or activists and organizations are trying to achieve now is that it's just a little bit easier, so that legal gender change isn't connected to your medical gender change, because not all people want to do that. So that's a question of bodily autonomy as well. There would still be measures in place, so it wouldn't be just you go in, you get your new documents, and you can come back tomorrow after you've committed some crime. There's still a waiting period. There's still conversations. So there are measures in place. It's just to make it less humiliating and less uncomfortable and more humane for people who really just want to live as their authentic selves without facing any maybe even violent consequences. And even as just not a straight person, and that's 10 times more for trans people, nobody decides to be trans for fun. It's not fun, it's really not. Trans people are one of the most vulnerable groups in the LGBT community. They're most likely to commit suicide, to be victim of a crime. Trans people over 30 are called survivors because just that many of them don't make it into their 30s. So nobody would choose to go into a bathroom where they're not comfortable. Nobody would choose to go into a changing room and, flash their private parts for other people to make other people uncomfortable. They're very uncomfortable to begin with. They just want to go on with their day and not bother anyone. Again, speaking from my experience with talking to trans people. So that concern, I understand where it comes from. I just wish there was a more relatable way of showing people what trans people's experience really is.
Thank you. You want to comment on that, sir?
Yeah. It's reminding me of the same issue that we had in the States, where when we were going through the bathroom laws and they were trying to make it illegal for trans people to use bathroom. I think it's really obvious when you have some creepy straight man dressed in a dress going into the woman's bathroom. That's not a trans person. That's a creepy straight guy being perv. But there were so many people that would make that argument. There were so many people that would be like, oh, well, what's to stop me from putting on a dress and going and creeping on, helpless, defenseless women trying to use bathroom. I've heard that so many times, and I just want to be like, okay, well, that's not a trans issue. That is a sexual harassment case that is not the same as a trans person. And it's really easy to tell the difference. If you see someone who might be in that time period before, especially if hormone therapy has just started or something, and it's well, are they going into the bathroom? Did they use the bathroom like a normal human? Are they trying to flash you? No, then leave them alone. Like, don't worry about it. The chances of you actually noticing that you're sharing a public space and whatnot with a trans person are slim to none anyway. And if you do happen to notice, then let them be. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Now, I don't care if you're in a bathroom or anywhere, if somebody is trying to, and this is straight, gay, male, female, doesn't matter. If somebody's making you feel uncomfortable, all right, that's a different problem entirely.
Okay, thank you. Just quick, again, there's another comment here, and well, comment and a question from the audience, a person called Mark, and he says, I'm Jewish and gay. I feel Estonian people are more tolerant to a point about me being gay than Jewish. Are my feelings justified? Anyone wants to comment on that? I personally would say, just quick note from myself, we had an Estonishing Evenings event about religion, I think it was in February, and we invited a Jewish representative, a Muslim representative, and a Christian one. And Jewish community leaders say that Estonia is actually a very good country to be a Jewish here. There hasn't been any violence against them for a long time. So that's the information they say public themselves. So it's interesting to hear. And if Mark, I don't know you, but if you want to raise your hand and comment it personally, would be great, of course. Oh, okay, here we go. Do you wanna? Okay, we'll get your mic. Just a second.
Hi. I've noticed when I haven't been here for very long. My husband and I have been coming here. He's been coming here for over 10 years. He's a dual citizen, and I've been coming for the last 5 years for a couple of weeks a year. People are accepting us as a couple, but I get looks when we start talking about religion, and people are really put off.
Can I just clarify? Is it like in one-to-one conversations, or where do you feel that? You know, do you wear kippah on the street? Someone say something about it? Or?
I don't.
No. Okay.
No. But I've talked to people who were friends, and now they're put off because of the religion thing.
Anyone wants to comment on that? We'll get you a mic, so everyone can hear what you're saying.
Isn't it maybe because people very hardly connect religion and being gay together? Because normally when you have very religious countries, the idea of being gay is less acceptable because normally all the Bible, etc., they don't accept it. They don't see very much, they don't like so much support the idea of same gender relationship as such. So maybe the connection of somebody being religious and gay just doesn't make sense for so many people.
From the event, we actually also found out that Estonians are really, really unreligious, and it doesn't really matter whether you are a Jew or a Muslim or a Christian. Estonians in general are really not aware about other religions, and it's something really new for them that someone has a religion. So I think it's, I mean, not new, but like it's not common, so.
That's true. I think that Estonian people actually may be quite intolerant to religious people. They look at them like some kind of weirdos or something like this.
Yeah.
But I would, yeah, it might be so. It's because, again, historical reasons probably, but I would be hugely surprised if that would be anything to do of you being Jewish. I mean, we have a very long history of Jewish, if I may say, elite or like people who are very well respected in Estonian society and who are Jewish, and I have very good contacts with the community in Estonia, and I also know from their points that they say that Estonia is kind of not at all. They have been feeling very safe here. The only threat they felt was when we had lots of people coming, not those who live in Estonia, but people who are coming with ferries from abroad, and if they might pose some threats because of the, what happened in many countries, all sorts of terrible attacks. So yeah, I honestly don't think that if you tell in anywhere in Estonia that you're a Jew, that you would be likely to have any people saying that this is something bad. I wouldn't accept that, or yeah, that would be a huge surprise for me.
Well, I have noticed in Western Europe that sometimes people are quite anti-Israel because of this political situation with Palestine and so on, and sometimes I do think that it's actually a cover to anti-Semitism, but I am not sure that this debate is very hot in Estonia.
I guess it could be one thing, yes, that people are, but I think generally Estonian people don't mix up, Jewish and well, whether they're Jewish or Israeli. I mean, okay, they know obviously there's a connection, but I mean, they also know that people, lots of Jews live outside Israel, personally. But I'm happy to speak to you about after the event and connect you with the local Jewish community as well. I'm sure they can share valuable information. But anyway, I've got a question.
Yeah, well, there's actually, there's a question at the end, but first I would like to share from personal experience. Somebody here mentioned that one of the most effective ways or I would say perhaps the only one, aside from legislation, is to be exposed to people of different races, sexual orientation, religions, disabilities. When you are exposed to all these individuals, you become tolerant. And from personal experience, I can say that it's actually true. I come from a city in Mexico. It's Guadalajara. It's very conservative. People that are even Protestant are not tolerated, not to mention gay people. People of darker skin are also discriminated there. And I moved to San Francisco to work there in a startup. And I remember the day when I went to the interview. After the interview, I saw two really hot guys kissing in the street in San Francisco. And that was a shock to me. Then I moved there. I had friends that were gay. Actually, my manager was gay. I made friends with Muslims, people from everywhere. And that actually changed me. And it's true that I think the most effective way to work towards tolerance is being exposed. And the younger you start, the better. And here comes the question. When I lived in North Carolina, there was a program to have kids from poor districts, school districts, to take classes in rich districts. And this basically broke the barrier of African American kids not making friends with white kids because of the economic divide, the gentrification problem. Question is something like that being pursued in Estonia? For example, having kids from different districts in Tallinn or different cities in Estonia, having courses, or just making sure youngsters mingle between each other from different cities, different districts, different socioeconomic backgrounds. Is the Minister of Education pursuing that? Because the future of Estonia is the kids. We're having all these corrective actions with the grown-ups that we probably not change many of our views. So the future is the kids. What are we doing to expose them to different individuals?
Okay, and I just quickly add another comment what was on a Slido is that, or question, why are young people more tolerant? But I mean, Taavi partly already explained that. That's exactly because of Soviet occupation. During the Soviet time, for example, homosexuality was a criminal offense. You could go to prison for 5 years for this, and no one was publicly out. So, of course, that's the logical answer to that. But anyone wants to comment on that? Question there?
I know there are exchanges between Russians and Estonian youth. So basically that kind of things are happening, for example, to bring young people together who are different or from different sides.
Also,
Yep,
yeah, sorry.
Just one comment. I think in Estonia, most stigmatized is Ida-Virumaa, the region to the east, especially Narva, of course. So there are some people call it the second or the third Estonia sometimes. So there is a huge gap in many things. And I feel very personally about it because both of my parents come from Ida-Virumaa, and I didn't really grow up there, but I spent most of my childhood summers and so on there. And I still go there very often. So it is my favorite place in Estonia. And although I've never lived there, and I'm also Estonian heritage, but I can see the way people are afraid to go to Ida-Virumaa. They're talking about it. So to answer your question, I think this would be the region in Estonia that's most maybe like excluded from talks of the society, that's kind of pushed aside a lot, or kind of the problem region a lot. We've also, just as a comment, we've talked about it within our team as well. Exactly, that we are having this privileged Kalamaja Telliskivi location here with the like-minded people most of the time, that it might also be maybe time for us to do an event in Narva, for example. I don't know in which language or with maybe live translations, but that's like an idea for the future as well, to bring people more together.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as I said, we're gonna have a Russian topic, separate topic, but let's just focus, and we're wrapping up slowly. Let's just focus on tonight's topic. Someone wanted to ask a question from Mick specifically. Can you raise your hand who wanted to ask a question from Mick? Okay, a gentleman at the back there. Yeah, we'll get the mic for you.
Thank you. Well, my name is Isaac. I think I've been in Estonia almost for 4 years. I'm not sure if I'm Catalan or Spanish, so I'm still deciding. And basically, before the question, I wanted to explain something, right? Like, I think many people has talked today about education, about how we make like Estonian men like come out, right, or something like that. And I think always goes because of pedagogy, right? So because education. So for example, if we take now like 2 kids like 2 years old, you will see, and one of just Estonian kid 2 years old, and then you take another, and you tell to that kid like, okay, yeah, so this is a man, Eric, for example, it's black, and it's going to be gay. Go and play with him. That other person will go and play with him without not thinking like, if it's, what does it mean to be black, or what does it mean to be gay, right? But so there is a pedagogy in the Estonian society, in every society, I guess, as well, direct or indirect, of how you become from 2 years old not caring or not giving a fuck about who you were, about starting moving into, yeah, take care because he's black, or take care because he's gay, or any other thing, right? So my point is like, also I believe that media has a role playing on that. And we were saying that Estonian media is a little bit trying to be a little bit neutral, but something that surprised me last year, I was in the LGBT parade that last year here in Tallinn, and it was very cool. But what was like 2,000 people? I don't know. Like, it was amazing. I was very surprised for that happening in Estonia. And my point is like, the first thing that I did when I arrived home was like, I'm gonna check Estonian media. I studied communication management here in Tallinn University, and media for me is important. I deal with marketing on my daily basis, and I was like, I want to see Estonian media. Like, let's see how they reproduce that, right? And the first thing that I see in Postimees, being center-right, conservative, I don't know, for example, it's this talking about Messi. The Estonian news, not the English version, right? The Estonian version, the first topic was Messi, and I was thinking like, oh, but I don't know, this in Catalonia maybe talking about Messi is something that sells newspapers, but I didn't know that here was something so special. And then I started scrolling down, and I see that probably was the 10th biggest news of the day, and I was like, come on, like it probably has been the biggest march of people in Estonia in support of human rights, and it's on the 10th position, not on the first one. So, and the title was more like, yeah, the parade happened, but it could have been more like, I mean, in my point of view, I don't know, in Spain, for example, it would have been more like biggest march of human rights in Estonia for the last 10 years. In the first news, right? So my question is like, do Estonian media has to do pedagogy, and how, and editors have to start probably switching.
Thank you.
Things, yeah.
We got a question. So question is why the Estonian media does not place enough emphasis on diversity and human rights, basically. Why they don't highlight and something like that happen?
Are you sure that it's true that the parade was not covered well enough for all?
I can say that it was covered, but when it came to galleries, for example, beautiful pictures, hundreds of beautiful pictures, the first 20 pictures are of the one drunken protester, and then the beautiful people.
So basically his point was it's not, it should be more on like a top news, but it was number 10, you said, and that was Postimees though. There are two media groups, just, but of course it doesn't excuse anything.
Postimees is a competitor, so I'm, well, I don't know. I do know how Delphi, this is another large online portal, yes, working. They are looking clicks. If people are reading, they are pushing these stories up. And if they are not reading, then the stories go down. Very that kind of value-free decision.
But at the same time, Mick, you said before, you spoke about the role models yourself. Don't you think that the Estonian media, perhaps they should interview also more those people who have, publicly come out, for example? I know there are not that many, but I mean, don't you think that media could play a bit of...
Actually, media quite often searches these people. They don't want to talk about it. We recently had an interview in Eesti Express with a businessman who is a gay, and he didn't want to talk about this topic. He's a very rich man, one of the richest in Estonia. We asked, we talked privately off the record, but he didn't want this to be in the paper.
Fair enough. But why do you think? Why is it so? I mean, Taavi, maybe you want to comment as well. But you talked about, we mentioned politicians as well, and I know some of your fellow members, party members in the parliament who were gay, or at least one of them. And why is he not coming out publicly? Why do you think so? Because even though the party was quite supportive, right?
I do not know that, but I'm struggling of knowing if there is anyone gay in the current parliament or government, and that's probably because I'm the worst people actually knowing that, and I don't think if it's necessary that I know that, because it's not necessarily my business. But having said that, I think what needs to be said also in defense of Estonian media is that if you compare the media action with the general atmosphere, I think they have been doing a tremendous job on getting things towards more understanding. Again, you cannot push it. You cannot do it like, now we put, kind of something on the first page and say you must do that, or you must tolerate this, or then it would get a different reaction. But I remember that during the cohabitation law discussion, I think Estonian media was very responsible, and I especially felt that when there was a question of refugees coming to Estonia, that actually overheated perhaps even more. Like that was the second debate after 1 year. We had the cohabitation law debate that every family in Christmas table was very passionately talking about and not necessarily agreeing among themselves. And the next year at Christmas tables, we were talking about refugees coming to Estonia. Basically, nobody came, but you know that's a different story. But it was very easy to play on fear card, and the Estonian people was kind of ready to accept the fear or ready to get afraid, and I think media was doing a very responsible job in explaining things. And then when it comes to pictures, you know, at any topic, of course we are very sensitive about all the topics that we are related to, but at any topic, very beautiful picture, getting the first will not be the one who gets most clicks. Most clicks is always if there is a sensation. If you know somebody has, you know, fallen somewhere, or you know, some like drunk Protestant is much better to photograph than just a beautiful Protestant. That's the unfortunate truth, and that's the click story probably, which is necessary because media needs to get their income as well, and we have to kind of understand that as well. So they are doing their business.
Thank you. And
I just wanted to add that today in Delphi, I know that one of the most popular stories was about some serial shitter, some man who was, pervert who was in public places doing his, you know, business.
Okay, let's take a question there.
I'm Hano actually, so I just wanted to bring some positive light into tolerance and what goes on in Estonia. So me and my husband Josh, we're the ones that actually 3 weeks ago we got the living permit, and we had a small nuance over there compared to Christina and Sarah, was that because I was living there, you know, in my opinion, that shouldn't be an issue, you know, where you're living, because they are as much as married we are, and as of a couple. And I think, Sarah, you actually touched a really good point over there that that tolerance, like for us actually, and I've been gone for 14 years now, and I just moved back half a year ago, that tolerance over here I've actually gotten from straight people or heterosexuals. I haven't had any problems, but the intolerance actually is within our community at some point. And the saddest part was that, you know, I've ran into that multiple times. Both Josh and we actually filled out an application. We wanted to be part of the LGBT association, but we were turned down. Or they wouldn't take our applications. I've also been very avid to a Human Rights Center, and I said, you can use my story. I also shared my the application and everything, whatever came back from Police and Border Control, and I really haven't been approached. And then I think that's the saddest part. So the question is, to our community, so how can we get rid of that intolerance inside of our community? Because we can't be the hypocrites of asking from other groups to be tolerant towards us if we are intolerant inside of our family. So to both parties, I really would like to know that, because we had such a positive time over here, and actually from Police and Border Control, we were pushed back. We were in the system for about 5 months, and they pushed back because your guys' case was in the courts. So what can we do? Because, you know, I'm just completely, actually, when Josh actually went to LGBT Association last week, I was really surprised. And one of the things they said was, oh, do you want to put this on your resume so that you would have volunteer, you know? And I was like, what? Like, we're the forefront, and we're the first couple in Estonia who got actually the living permit. you know, again, because of that small nuance, but like it doesn't really matter. So what can we do?
As the person who had the conversation with Josh, I would just like to clarify, we weren't turned down because of intolerance. It's because we're just not accepting members anymore, because we're trying to tone down members. However, we did find a collaboration point with Josh. But the issue of not working together within the community is also very, very much real. It starts from like the previous topic of the media. There's just not enough people who are willing to talk publicly. Like we just recently got some younger people who aren't burdened, I guess, by all the previous experiences that old generations have, who are willing to publicly speak about being trans. We could not find a single trans person who would be willing to speak publicly. So on one hand, it's people who have a lot to lose, who are already vulnerable, don't want to speak publicly, and at the same time, people who are very comfortable, like the rich people or people in government or parliament, they're just very comfortable and they don't want to cause inconveniences to themselves. So the reasons are on like both ends of the spectrum. And within the community, as much as I hate to admit it, but the LGBT plus community is also just regular people. So just because you're gay or lesbian or trans doesn't make you a saint. You can still be a racist, you can still be a sexist, and that's unfortunately the reality. So there can be conflicts between, say, men and women who are all both gay or lesbian, but other differences come into play. There can be problems with, let's say, non-binary people who are in the trans umbrella, but let's say more normative trans people think that they're doing them a disservice by being too vague and confusing people because they fought to be very clearly one or the other gender. There's age differences. The unfortunate part about this here is that this is a very small country and the community is even smaller. So if there's two people bickering, that's already a huge loss because the people who are active in the community are even fewer. So that's why I'm very happy to see that Sarah and I aren't the only couple who are out and proud. And there's more diversity. But I'm not sure how to overcome the conflicts within the community because people are just so different. Same thing with the parade. Some people really supported the idea of the parade. Some people say, I never want to see a parade again in my life because I remember too many of them from the Soviet times. Young people want it, older people don't want it. So there's just so many things that come into play. I think one part of it is explaining to people why it's important to be out in public and to talk about yourselves, but you can never force anyone to be out. You can never force anyone to be. Even gay people can be intolerant. You can never force anyone to anything.
Okay, I've got one hand there. The thing is, the time just flies. We promised panelists we're gonna finish 9:30. We half an hour over the schedule. But I'll take your remark there once quickly, briefly. Just the gentleman at the back, and then we're gonna wrap up. Sorry, guys.
I'm clumsy, I'm sorry.
Is it on? So I think the way to connect people is through activity. I mean, I live in Berlin, so there's a huge gay community over there, not just the youngsters. The fantastic thing about Schöneberg, which is an area over there, is that elderly people have a community where they do things. They're not gay first, they play dodgeball, they play different things. So I think it's activities. They have bingo, they play bingo every Saturday. So it's these small things that unite people. So I think people don't want to be gay first, they want to be all these other things first. So I think we need to organize simple activities that brings people together. It sort of forms debate. So I think we don't have any of that. We don't have a gay club where there is something like this, but it's kind of dodgy. It's not really a place where any of us would want to stay. I think I would be ashamed of myself to go there on the weekend. So I think it's the simple activities that's completely missing in our society. We are not organizing anything. I think this is a key issue over here.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not going to argue over taste. Some people like going to a club, some people don't. On that note, I would very much encourage anyone to feel that they can organize something. Very often people feel like, oh, there's an organization, they'll do it, and I'll just go and consume whatever they give me. That's not how it works. The word association might sound fancy, but it's literally like 3.5 people working there. Like, very limited resources. Same thing with like Human Rights Center or us, and I know like a handful of activists who might organize like queer parties or some talks or something, but this many people. There's only so much they can do. So I always try to encourage people that you don't have to have a fancy title in order to organize something. You can talk to people, network a bit, create an event. Next time it's even bigger. Like anybody can do something. If you feel that something is missing, do it, and the people who are already doing it will support it. So this like kind of horizontal community, like not even activism, just acting and mobilizing and organizing and doing things together is very much lacking here. I think it might be getting better with younger generations because they get examples from elsewhere as well, and they know it's a possibility. But the reality is that a handful of people need help from the community as well, so it has to come from within. So if anybody has any good ideas, please do it and we'll support it.
There's also a similar comment here that creating safe environments like the one today is already helpful. Maybe support groups for all who feel misfit and not just those who speak Estonian. So of course the society is changing, more and more people are coming from other countries here, so it's changing as this event shows. But anyway, last note, I'm sorry guys, we're just well behind, and sorry all those whose questions are not answered, but we'll come back to maybe to the same topic in future, and then we can discuss again. But last note, Estonia in 5 years' time, what's your take when it comes to diversity and tolerance? Let's end with a positive note.
Small improvements, but not much.
That's a skeptical view, journalist view.
I don't think that was very skeptical because he said improvements.
Okay, fair enough.
But I think time will take us to be more liberal for sure. And if we are smart enough to measure the steps, that is very important. I think I'm not sure if we want in legislation we want to achieve some. There are sometimes small, but for you tremendously important changes. Of course, if there is a stupid bureaucratic problem that makes a distinction between you and Hanna and Josh just because of this technicality, then obviously the parliament or whoever has the power needs to deal with that, and that obviously needs to be done sooner than in 5 years. I wouldn't expect any change in better or worse in either constitution or anything that very fundamental in that. I think those voices, ultra-conservatives that are saying that we should have something in constitution, they are purely doing it for the sake of getting votes from their electorate, which is the conservative electorate. What I hope to see in the next 5 years is more people feeling safe to be open about it. And perhaps also, I'm sorry to say, but I don't even know if there are good places where to go and meet, like where you can feel safe. There is an obvious need for that in Tallinn, and also for those, if you are from outside Estonia, you need to know where to go and whom to meet in order to really feel like that nobody looks differently or like at you or something like that.
Well, there is one gay club as far as I know, but Sarah.
Obviously, I think Estonia is progressing when it comes to this topic. I mean, I haven't been. Sorry. Anyway, I haven't been here for very long, a year this time, on and off for, 4 years. As an outsider, I mean, I see the progression, and obviously, as a foreigner, I'm not going to understand the cultural differences, but since I have, lived in the States for so long, I really just want the Estonian public and especially the Estonian community to start organizing more things and start like becoming more visible and building, and also to stop being so afraid of controversy. Like, these things need to be discussed, and the faster you discuss them, the easier it gets, and the faster things actually move along. But you can't always play it safe. I mean, that goes anywhere from, you know, trying to push laws through to organizing pride. I mean, just going back off of what Kiku was talking about, like, definitely within the community itself, it's like go for it. Don't think that you can't do something. I mean, I am not much of an organizer, and I somehow managed to help a little bit, maybe not as much as I should have, but still managed to, you know, push pride to actually happen. And plenty of people did not want that. Plenty of people, you would have to talk and debate with them all day, and those are also people within the community itself. Like, anyway, as far as progression goes, like, I think it's important just to actually start making changes instead of waiting for other people to do it for you.
Thank
So
you.
that's why I want to see it.
Thanks. And Christina, you want to finish that?
Yes, very shortly, I would like to see decision makers be more brave at their jobs, and the community to be stronger and more, I don't know what's a good word, outspoken, self-reliant, just more proud.
Thank you. We're wrapping up. Just before we finish, also would like to thank our sponsors, Telliskivi Creative City, Human Rights Center, and Estonian World as a media partner. We are Estonishing Evenings. If you want to follow our future events, just go to Facebook, find Estonishing Evenings page, and we post all the updates. Probably gonna have a summer holiday. I'm sure many of you will maybe travel away as well, and will return in September. Question of Estonian Russians and versus Estonians, etc. That might be actually our next event, but yeah, you will see. But thanks again, Christina, Sarah, Taavi, and Mick. Thank you. And thank you for coming. Nice summer evening out there. So our team actually will go to Pudel Bar, I think, have a few drinks. So if any of you want to join with us and have a sort of post-event discussion or just have a drink, that's also great. Thank you again.